Some of you have asked me to do a stropping video to show what I do to prep my razors before I shave. So here we go. So stropping is about refreshing the very small pieces of metal in the edge, basically. This is a leather strop, cow leather. There are all kinds of them. This is textile, it's cotton, I think. It's what typically is referred to as linen. I use this I do 10 laps just after I've shaved to make sure the edge is properly dry. And then to prep before a shave, I use the leather side, and I do 50 to 60 strokes. So I make sure it's tight, pretty damn tight. Can you make it too tight? Not really, but if your arm is hurting, you might be doing it a bit too tight. But it's gonna flex anyway, so you don't have to worry about that. And in the beginning, more tight than you have to is a good idea. The edge, the spine of the razor should always touch the strop. The edge, obviously, the motion is away from the spine, so you want to make sure you never ever go the other way with the edge first, because then you get nicks and cuts like that, which ruins your strop and it ruins your razor as well. And then you gotta apply a bit of pressure, and the tricky bit is how much. If you have a full hollow razor like this one, I go by the sound. You wanna get a swoosh sound as opposed to just going on the spine. So you wanna hear the edge work, basically. It's trial and error, but if you pull the strop tight, and apply a bit of pressure, you'll get there. Almost 100% of all razors aren't perfectly straight. Some are 99 if they're new, but not 100%. And also the strop isn't perfectly straight either. So I've learned, and I find very helpful, that mixing in a few X sort of strokes in the whole thing is pretty good, because then you make sure the whole edge has touched the strop. So 50 or 60 of these. My coordination skills are appallingly poor, so I sometimes miss drops. I just make sure I don't mess up the edge. So I keep the spine onto the strop at all times, and I lead by the spine and pull the edge of the blade to get the action. So that's a full hollow. If you have a wedge, you don't get this sound that at least I go by. It's pretty much completely silent, so you have to pay a bit more attention to what you're doing and sort of visually make sure you're doing the right thing. When you get the hang of it, you feel in your arm if you're doing it properly. This strop has we'd say it's tuggy if we were shaving. It has a lot of resistance, so you've got to pull and push quite a bit. There are other strops which don't. It's a matter of preference, really. But with the wedge, I do the same amount of laps, basically, and just try to pay attention to make sure the edge gets proper action. If you pull enough, if you keep it straight enough, you almost can't. Well, I shouldn't say this, but okay, I'll finish anyway. You almost can't use too much pressure. You can, of course, but when it's flexible and you push too much, well, if it's flexible at all, you're going to make the edge round rather than straight. because you know the sides of the edge meet, and that's what makes it the razor sharp. So pull properly. You'll see videos of where it's more flex than what I'm showing, and maybe that's okay, but you don't need a whole lot. It has to flex, otherwise the edge doesn't get into contact, especially with the wedge, but you don't need much. Another thing you can do when the edge is starting to be a bit dull, if it's really dull, it has to go to a stone and it has to be honed, but if it's just a bit dull, you can use chromium oxide, which is a paste. There are different kinds of paste. This is the only one I use. I used to have it on a hanging strop, but it's this is a bit abrasive, so if you don't do the motions properly, you mess up the edge, which of course I did a few times on a hanging strop. So I have a piece of, I think it's called balsa wood, or at least that's what we call it, so a super light, soft kind of wood, which is not perfectly straight, but it's pretty straight. So you put it on there and make a stropping action. So you go away from the spine, just like when you strop on a hanging strop. So wrong angle for me. I usually don't have it here, but I'll try and show you anyway. Just go back and forth. This is 150 years old and has hone wear all over the place, so it's very much not straight. So you've got to go at it from a few different directions, but no or very little pushing, just like when you strop, and just try and get, well, you can see where the paste ends up. You want to make sure you've covered the edge of the razor on both sides a few times, and voila. And after that, you just take a bit of tissue paper, wipe it off. You want to get it off because it is abrasive, and it will discolor strops, etc. So you wipe it off properly, and then I go to the linen side of the strop a few times, and then just strop it like usual on the leather side, and you've refreshed your edge quite a bit more than if you only strop.